The history of the royal family of Hyrule is also the history of Calamity Ganon, a primal evil that has endured over the ages.
I think you are now ready. Ready to hear what happened 100 years ago.
This is the perfect way to start off this trailer. Having Impa from the present time of Breath of the Wild begin her story of what happened in the past, and following on with the King of Hyrule saying that line, it feels like he's talking to us. That we are now ready to know the events that led to Breath of the Wild. I've been someone to say in the past that the main part of the story of Breath of the Wild, while good, took place before the actual game, and that I'd love to see that story explored in a game for us to play someday. But I never thought Nintendo would do it. We know whatever happened back then didn't end well for anyone. The kingdom was destroyed, the champions failed and their spirits became trapped within the divine beasts, Link died in battle, and Zelda began her 100-year-long battle against Calamity Ganon. If Nintendo chose to show these events in full, it would be a very sad game with a depressing ending, and I really didn't know if Nintendo would ever do that. But here we are with a brand new game showing those exact events, and some events that came before it. And I am beyond excited about it. Hey Hylians! Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is a brand new Legend of Zelda game. Normally I'd call it a spin-off, but I don't know if I can do that with this one. While there are things in the gameplay we have seen that do seem to conflict with a little of the story of Breath of the Wild, I feel the main parts of the story will definitely be considered canon, and will be telling us the story many of us have wanted to see in full for a very long time now. Today I want to go through the trailer for this game and talk about things being shown as well as things you might have missed. But at the time of this video going up, I'm pretty sure 90% of other Zelda content creators have already got videos very similar to this up. So along with what's in the trailer, I want to talk about some of my personal thoughts and theories on what we could be seeing in this game. So let's waste no more time and get right into looking at this trailer. Like I said before, the trailer starts with Impa telling us the story of Calamity Ganon, the same story she tells to us in Breath of the Wild. Although we only hear one line from Impa, I'm sure this audio is the exact same audio used from Breath of the Wild in that story moment. Which means, if you can't already tell from her voice, this is old Impa. Impa from the time of Breath of the Wild, 100 years after this game is set. Which gave me a couple of ideas. One, this could simply be being used for the trailer, just to set the tone. But another idea I had is that this could be Impa from the time of Breath of the Wild telling the story to us, or to some other character. And throughout this game, she will be some kind of narrator. In Hyrule Warriors between levels, we did have a narrator telling us the story of what was going on between each level. So maybe she'll be doing something similar. So as we'll be playing through the story as it happens, technically, it's a story being told by Impa in the present time of what happened 100 years ago. In Breath of the Wild we saw some of this in flashback story moments, but this scene is all new, and I won't be surprised if we see even more of Castle Town being destroyed in the actual game. Following on from this, we then hear the King of Hyrule tell us that now classic line.
I think you are now ready. Ready to hear what happened 100 years ago.
And I say telling us because, like I said at the beginning, I feel this line is being directed at us. We are now ready. We are now ready to learn the truth of what happened 100 years ago. And as he's saying this, the grainy filter over the image disappears, leaving us with the beautiful, bright Hyrule Castle, showing us that we are going to be playing and experiencing this story from 100 years ago. This trailer really does start well, it's really setting the mood of what's to come. Moving on from Hyrule Castle, we then see Link raising his sword to the sky. Or maybe I should say raising his sword skyward? Anyway, in this we see that he does not yet have the champion's tunic, and is actually wearing the soldier's armor from Breath of the Wild, reminding us that before becoming Zelda's personal knight, he was a soldier for the kingdom. You can see what looks to be boots behind him, so I'm guessing that this could be a moment with many soldiers of Hyrule coming together for some kind of ceremony or meeting, maybe with Zelda or the King of Hyrule. When I saw this link is when I started feeling that this was going to be something more than just a little DLC pack for Hyrule Warriors. As in Hyrule Warriors, when Link was depicted as other Links from other games, it was pretty much the normal Hyrule Warriors model, just with different clothes and hair to make him look a little bit more like that game's Link. This Link is exactly the same one from Breath of the Wild. Up next, we then see the beautiful princess herself, Zelda. Walking through what I'm guessing to be Hyrule Castle, she looks nervous at the scene, almost sad. Perhaps this leads into the moment Link was chosen to be her personal knight, and she's not all too happy with it still. Or perhaps this scene and the scene of Link before go together. She walks out into the light at the end, so maybe she could be walking out onto some kind of balcony that's overlooking the soldiers down below. This scene though is really adding to the mood of the trailer. Zelda walking through this shadowy corridor, making it feel more moody and gloomy, and the little piano keys in the background are really adding to it. I love all of this. But then after that we get our first look at gameplay, at least in-game graphics. As the camera pans over, we see the sacred grounds, the location where in one of the memories in Breath of the Wild, Zelda was reciting the sacred blessing over Link. And obviously now we get to see what it looked like 100 years ago, as in Breath of the Wild it was in ruins. That is something that I'm really excited to see in this game. All of the locations from Breath of the Wild that were destroyed and in ruins, now in the way they were supposed to be. As the camera moves on, we see Hylian soldiers charging out into battle with a group of bokoblins and moblins. But there is a lot going on in this moment. We have the soldiers, but we also have cannons going off, shooting large groups of the monsters ahead and in front of the camera, because as we move, there are so many explosions. But the camera makes its way through these explosions and finishes off in front of a moblin, where we also find Link getting ready to fight it. We can actually see Link a little before the camera stops on this, fighting some bokoblins before running forward and ending on this scene. Before we move on to the next scene, I just want to point out again how cool it is seeing Hyrule not in ruins. Looking at all these small stone pillars leading towards the sacred grounds, in Breath of the Wild you can find these in pretty much the exact same place, but obviously destroyed. The same goes for the flags standing in the field. They can also be found pretty much in the same spot within Breath of the Wild. I'm already loving all the little details in the world to try and make it feel like Breath of the Wild as much as possible. In the background we can see some pretty large structures. Now in gameplay I'm pretty sure these will be some of the keeps, as they definitely stand out. But looking back at Breath of the Wild, these could be some of the villages and outposts. The one on the left could actually be Maber Village, which is pretty much in the exact same location if we look at the map of Breath of the Wild. Moving on, next we see a short clip of the Zora and Hylian princesses Mifa and Zelda walking together. Not really too much going on in this moment, it's short and the two are just looking at the Sheikah Slate. But I have an idea on something which could be happening and something that I would like to maybe happen. If we look at Zelda's face, she seems to be blushing a little. Maybe her and Mifa could be talking about Link together. We know that Mifa had some very strong feelings for Link, and it's heavily implied that Zelda may have also had those feelings. Maybe Mifa could be talking to Zelda about her plan to make Link the Zora armor, an item of clothing made by Zora princesses for their husbands. It's pretty much an engagement ring for the Zora. Zelda most likely would know what this means, so without Mifa even telling that she's in love with Link, Zelda would instantly understand Mifa's feelings for him, and perhaps would feel a little conflicted because of her own feelings. Just a little idea, but I'd love to see the relationships between the champions, Zelda and Link, explored more in this game. Next is a very quick but very cool shot of Link and Rivali seemingly fighting one another. Link is again in his soldier's armour, showing that this is very likely taking place before he's been appointed Zelda's personal knight and the champions have been chosen, as Rivali doesn't have the blue scarf we see him wear once he's been appointed a champion. It's very foggy or snowy in this scene, so it could be happening up in Hyrule Mountains. This could explain why Rivali is there, as the flight range and Rito village are very close by. Also, could this perhaps be the first time Link and Rivali meet? I can't remember if it said how long the champions have known each other. We know that Link and Mifa have known each other for a while, but it would be really cool to see him actually meet some of the others. Rivali is a jerk, but I love him and his relationship and rivalry with Link. Also, Rivali just looks really cool in this shot. There's no other way to say it, it just looks really cool. Following on from this, we're back in Hyrule Field. I feel this could be one of the openings to one of the opening levels, as Hyrule looks pretty normal and the monsters attacking are just some red moblins and bokoblins, and we also have a couple of green Lizalfos blending into the grass, all of these being the weakest versions of these particular enemies that you can find in Breath of the Wild. We can see that this is very close to where the pan shot from a little while ago was, as we can see the sacred grounds in the back right, and the main entrance of Hyrule Castle Town behind it. On the left we have some more cannons, which is making me think, will these be something we have to capture to use, or will we have people just firing them all the time? Can enemies also use them? We'll have to wait and see. But now we have our first real look at some gameplay, as we have Link throwing a remote bomb into a camp of blue bokoblins. So this is interesting, and where I said I think the cutscenes are definitely going to be canon, but I'm not too sure about the actual gameplay and levels. As in Breath of the Wild, we had to unlock the remote bombs and other runes for the Sheikah Slate from the shrines, what would have not been open at this time. The only way I can really think of them finding a way to make this work is using someone like Purah, who could have unlocked these runes for Link and Zelda on the Sheikah Slate. But when Link was put in the Shrine of Resurrection, they were removed when the slate was put into that little device we take it out of at the beginning of the game. It's something I'm hoping will be explained in the story. With the rest of this scene though, we obviously get a look at the blue bokoblins and the camp. I'm getting the feeling that the camps are going to be outposts that we maybe have to take over, or they're just something that spawns monsters throughout the level, or you know, we just blow them up. Link seems to be having fun doing that. Now, this is what I was talking about, and how the moment with Link at the start could be part of some ceremony or meeting with the King and Princess Zelda. This cutscene with the King of Hyrule clearly takes place at the same time as the one with Link. We can see all of the soldiers down below as the King of Hyrule seems to be giving a speech, maybe to get them ready before going to attack the monsters approaching Hyrule Castle. I really get the feeling that this, the part with Link, and the part with Zelda walking out are all part of the same cutscene, and will take place pretty much at the start of the game or just really close to it. Everything feels really casual, like it's just another day of defending Castle Town from moblins again. But that casual feeling quickly goes out the window as right after we see the return of Calamity Ganon. Ganon's malice is already infiltrating Hyrule Castle, the sky is getting darker, and lightning is forming over the top of the castle. Also, it's hard to catch, but as the camera zooms out, we can see Link, Zelda, and a Sheikah woman. This woman could be Purah, but I'm thinking it's more likely to be Impa, and I'll talk a little why on that in an upcoming clip. This moment though is very interesting because of what could be happening. I feel this takes place after Link and Zelda have gone back to the castle to maybe try and save her father, who most likely was within the castle. Maybe when they get there, the king is already dead, and Impa was the only one left alive, so she came with Link and Zelda. We know this moment has to take place before the moment where Zelda breaks down crying to Link, as they're running away from the castle. In that moment, Zelda tells us that by that time the champions and her father were already killed. We then see Zelda looking up at the large pillars that surround Hyrule Castle as they release Guardians, and this is so cool to finally see. It was shown in the Creating a Champions book, but to actually see it in game is really cool. And it just makes you wonder how many Guardians were contained within each of those pillars. Moving on, we next get a clip of the King of Hyrule. We can see behind him the large Triforce statue that you can find in Breath of the Wild, which has a cute little secret of having the notes for Zelda's lullaby around the edge of it. I always love that little touch. We then get to see who the king is looking down at. We see Link, Zelda, and that Sheikah woman again, who again I think is Impa. The woman's hair is done very similar to Impa's granddaughter we see in Breath of the Wild, Pyre. She also has pretty much the exact same hat as Impa in Breath of the Wild, although maybe this one is a little smaller. With Impa in this game, I really hope that she'll be playable. We have two Hylians, a Goron, a Zora, a Gerudo, and a Rito, which are playable. I think it'll be perfect to get a Sheikah in on the fight. Even if it was just for 1 or 2 levels or just as a fun side character, I'd love to see Impa playable in this game. Again, in this scene we can also see Link is in his soldier's armour, still telling us that this takes place before he's been appointed Zelda's knight, but this could actually be the moment where that happens. Zelda seems to be in her adventuring clothes and not her dress, so maybe the three had been out around Hyrule helping out or researching the Sheikah Slate, before coming back and being scolded by the king. Maybe, just another thought. One little thing you may have missed though is what looks to be the small guardian character on the ground next to Zelda. We don't know much about this little guy yet, but I have a feeling that he'll be used like Proxy was in Hyrule Warriors, maybe talking for Link. I also think that he can be worked into the story as a little side project that Zelda was working on by herself. And side note, look at the castle, it's beautiful. I really love having all these locations not in ruins. We can even see the large circle pattern on the floor which Calamity Ganon would later crash through, leading into the observatory. Maybe within this game we could finally find out a little bit more about that location. Now this is super fast and very hard to see, but before the cannons go off we can see that the cannons are lined up against a stone building or stone wall. There are 2 places that come to mind of where this could be. One is Hyrule Castle, but 2 is the Akala Citadel. I really hope it's the latter, because getting to see that fight and see how it was finally taken over would be amazing. It's something I've seen a very large amount of people say that they also want to see, so I really hope it's included. We do actually get to see the Akala region a little later, so I'll talk a little bit more about that then. After that scene with the cannons, we then see a shot of these Stau monsters rising up from the ground. It's hard to tell where this could be set, but with the wooden planks in the background, I think this could be a village which was destroyed. As the camera pans across, we can see more of the background. We can see things that look to be wooden spikes or pillars, and at the very edge we can see a tree with no leaves. It could just be the lighting or the camera, but it looks black, so maybe it was burnt? Maybe this was a village that was eventually burnt down by the Guardians, now leaving a nice creepy open area for Stau monsters to come from. The Stau monsters also look really cool in this shot, the lighting makes them look really spooky. Then we move on to this awesome shot of a Lionel getting ready to fight. And who's he fighting? It's Zelda! I think with it being a Warriors game, many of us expected to play as Zelda, but to have it confirmed to us is very nice. And the way that Zelda is fighting is really interesting, as we can see her using Stasis, one of the runes from Breath of the Wild. Again with the runes and why we are seeing them before Link unlocks them in Breath of the Wild could be because of Pura, or just to give us some way of fighting outside of swords for characters like Zelda. But using the Sheikah Slate as a weapon I think is perfect for Zelda. She's very interested in the technology of the Sheikah, so I think it's the perfect choice to have her use the Sheikah Slate as a weapon. We can also see that this shot is taking place at Zora's domain. There's not too much I can really point out in the background of the shot, apart from what looks to be a lantern on the left, which is a little interesting as most of the lights in Zora's domain are luminous stones, so maybe this could be some kind of checkpoint or beacon or something along those lines. The Lionel obviously looks great, it's got a sword and shield, maybe in later fights we'll see them with spears and bows. I'm also getting the feeling that this Lionel fight could also be a boss or at least an important fight, as we don't see any other monsters around at the time. Moving on, we get our first look at one of the playable champions, Mifa the Zora princess, as she fights a guardian. We can see how she'll be using her trident as her main weapon, but also be using her water abilities, much like Rito did in Hyrule Warriors. I'm really interested to see how she'll work her healing powers into her fighting. Maybe once her special meter is ready, she can use it to heal herself to full, or it could heal all of the allied troops on the battlefield. Not too much I can see on the background, I can't really tell where this is. It looks like a pretty generic rocky area. One idea I did have on where this could be is the pathway towards the Gerudo Desert. It's pretty hard to pinpoint a place as there are a lot of rocky areas that look like this in Breath of the Wild. Next up, we get to see my personal favourite of the champions, Ibosa, the Gerudo chief, fighting a lot of Yiga clan members. We get to see Ibosa using the parry slowdown move seen in Breath of the Wild. And when we look at her sword, we can see that it's infused with electric power. Obviously, Ibosa's Fury, the champion power you get from her, is a big shot of lightning to all monsters around you. So it's nice to see that electric lightning power already making its way into her moves. I really hope we'll see Ibosa's Fury as a special though. Apart from Ibosa though, there is actually a lot going on in this shot. We can clearly see that this fight takes place within Gerudo town, so I'm guessing that the Yiga have started an ambush out of nowhere, as we can see some of the stalls in the background have been smashed down and the Gerudo are fighting back. We can actually see 4 other Gerudo in the background of this shot, who I'm guessing are going to be part of your team. There are also Hylian soldiers in the background fighting alongside you, so maybe the Gerudo will be the captains or tougher members of your team. One little detail that I hope that they put in is that all of the Hylian soldiers fighting within Gerudo town are female. Obviously the Gerudo don't like males being in their town, so it would be really cool if they keep that little detail, and I'd be a little disappointed if when I get to this part in the game they are guys, because I would really like to see that little detail of making the soldiers female when fighting with the Gerudo. With the Yiga, we can see the 2 different types, the smaller Yiga foot soldiers and the larger Yiga blade masters. Safe to say that the foot soldiers will be the weaker of the 2. Right before the shot ends, in the background we can see another group of Yiga coming from around the corner, so I'm wondering how this level could be handled. I think it'd be pretty cool to have us in Gerudo town fighting off and trying to protect the town, while Yiga pour in through the town to try and kill all who's inside and take the Thunder Helm. Before I move on, I just want to mention something else about the Yiga, as I can't remember if they show up again in this trailer. In Hyrule Warriors we got to play as villains, so maybe at some point in this story or in another mode we could play as the Yiga attacking the Gerudo and other locations around Hyrule. I think it'd be really cool to play the story on both the hero side and the villain side, saying the villains will technically win this game. Along with that, is Master Koga around at this time? We don't know how old he is and how long he's been around, but he is the leader of the Yiga, so maybe he could have somehow been around at this point and actually been in shape and put up more of a fight. It would also be really fun to play as him if he's included. I think he'd play a lot like Zant. We then get this lovely shot of the champions and Link standing together in the sunset. It's so pretty, but the context behind it maybe isn't so nice. We can't tell where it takes place, as we can't really see the background, but this could be after Calamity Ganon has come back, and this will be the last time they'll see each other before going off to their divine beasts, and Link goes off with Zelda. It does look really dramatic, and we do see Rivali start to walk off before the shot ends. As well though, this could just be them standing together as they listen to Zelda or someone talking to them. Oh, and this is, I believe, the first time in the trailer we have seen Link in his champion's tunic, knowing that this will take place later in the game. After that, we then move on to a shot of Varudania, the divine beast controlled by Daruk. It's going to be very interesting to see how these giant contraptions work with the story and gameplay. Will we get to control them at some point? We do know that they will eventually be taken over by Ganon's malice and the blights, so could we have to fight inside of them to try and get them back on our side before it's too late? Which it definitely will be. Hard to say. We can tell though that Varudania does seem to be on Death Mountain, or at least somewhere in the Death Mountain area, as we see little embers flying through the air and fire around Rudania's feet. Though, if the divine beasts do make their way into Hyrule more as the game goes on, this could be, like I mentioned before, around a burnt down village or from the Guardians. We then move back to Zora's domain as we see Zora fighting a Moblin and a Bokoblin. There's another Zora in the back along with some more monsters. An ambush on Zora's domain maybe? Perhaps we have to fight them off as Mifa or Link. Maybe both. Maybe we need to fight them off as Baby Sidon. No matter who we use to fight them off though, it seems these Zoras are taking quite the beating, as we see the Zora closer to the camera getting knocked back by just a normal Bokoblin. And then we move on to the next champion, Daruk, my second favourite out of the champions. You have to love Gorons. We see him using a boulder breaker to attack a black Hinox, the strongest type of Hinox. Daruk has some very cool looking abilities. In this we see 3 large pillars of molten rock burst from the ground and damage the Hinox, and he finishes the attack with a nice little pose and smile towards the camera. Again, how can you not love Gorons? They are adorable. But apart from the Hinox and our lovable Goron friend, the background of the fight is one of the most interesting we have seen so far. This area is 100% the Akala Citadel. The bridge on the left behind Daruk is the exact same one leading to the Citadel in Breath of the Wild. meaning we are very likely going to be getting a good look at how this area looked 100 years ago. In Breath of the Wild, this area is very damaged and covered in malice. We know a very large battle went on in this place, and in the end, it was not the Hylians who won. Are we going to get to fight in that battle? Will we be trying to fight off hordes of monsters and maybe even malice making their way inside? I can't wait to see this place in game. From the little we can see in the background, the Akala Citadel looks huge. The large walls around the base and the tall towers coming out of the rocks. It's going to be so exciting to see this area how it was supposed to be. We then get to see the last of the champions, Rivali the Rito. As you would expect, Rivali is using his bow to attack the enemies, and the enemies he is facing are a group of black bokoblins, some of the tougher types of bokoblins, so maybe this level is a little later in the game. Apart from Rivali's bow, I can't really tell much about his fighting style, but we do know that he'll be using his special ability, Rivali's Gale. In Breath of the Wild, this sends you upwards with a large updraft, but how could this work in game? Maybe it's simple and just lets Rivali fly with his attacks. He is above the ground in this shot, so maybe he was flying before this. The background is again a little hard to pinpoint though. It first reminded me of Twilight Princess. Obviously though, that's not going to happen. But for places that it could actually be, it did remind me of the place I mentioned for where Mifa was fighting, and the Akala region, or even towards Death Mountain. We can see what looks to be rocky mountains off on the left side, so maybe this could be part of the Death Mountain mountain range? We have these big wooden and steel gates in the background, so maybe the bokoblins had bashed down the gate and we have come here to stop them. Now the next shot of Link is really interesting. We see him fighting against something. I can't tell who or what this is that he's fighting, but we can see whatever it is using some kind of electric power. Could Link be fighting some type of Wizrobe? It might not even be a person or a monster holding it, but a machine or a guardian. Maybe a new guardian for this game? Or even a new monster for this game. Again, I can't really tell too much, but my first thought was Link fighting a Wizrobe. So with the next shots, I'm going to be grouping them all together, as I'm pretty sure they show the same thing for each of the champions. Their deaths. We see Ibosa, Mifa, Daruk and Rivali, all quite quickly, but each of them is clearly fighting something. We see in the shot of Ibosa her falling to her knees, as if she's just lost a fight. And by looking at the background, we know exactly where she is, inside the Divine Beast, Varnaboris. This is definitely going to be the moment where she loses her life in the fight with Thunderblight Ganon. Next up is Mifa. While we don't see her fighting in the shot, we know that she's about to. It might be that she's already been fighting, as we see a faint white light around her. I believe this is her healing power. Maybe she had already been fighting and had been greatly injured by Waterblight Ganon, and she uses her power to prolong her battle against the Blight. She is already holding her trident, and while it is a little bit harder to make out, she does seem to be within Divine Beast Varuta. The stone walls in the back look to be the same ones we find in the Divine Beasts. Then we move on to Daruk. It's harder to tell where he's standing, it does also look like the stone used in the Divine Beasts. In this we can see Daruk using his special ability, Daruk's Protection, as he fights back against a large ball of fire. This is definitely him fighting Fireblight Ganon. I'm guessing that he'll be fighting Fireblight Ganon on top of the Divine Beast, the same place that we did in Breath of the Wild. Again, lastly is Ravali, who is being shot at by a purple beam. Windblight Ganon uses a Guardian style laser beam to attack, so it's very likely that this is what is shooting at him. There's not much in the background that can place it as one of the Divine Beasts, but as Var Meadow flies in the sky, and so does Rivali, it could be that he's fighting on the Divine Beast, but just higher up because he's flying. We fight Windblight Ganon on top of the Divine Beast, so it's very likely going to be the same place for Rivali. Rivali being outside would also explain why it looks to be raining or snowing. Moving on from the champions, we then see Link and Zelda, as they approach the entrance to Hyrule Castletown from the way of the castle. We know that this is Castletown as we can see the blue roofs of the buildings. We can also see some flags lining the side of a stone bridge. The fact that we're going to be able to see Castletown again makes me so happy. We've gotten little hints and clips of what it looked like through Breath of the Wild, but it's always been so fast and we haven't got to explore it because obviously it's destroyed in Breath of the Wild. Although that happy Castletown doesn't seem to last much longer. At first I thought Link and Zelda were making their way into Castle Town to go to the castle, but after looking at it a little longer, I can tell that this is Link and Zelda leaving the castle. The large doors are the same ones what open when you head to the castle in Breath of the Wild. And we can see that there are trees on the left hand side. If we look at Breath of the Wild, those trees are in the exact same spot, just now all burnt. So with this, we can tell that whatever is shooting at Link and Zelda is coming from the direction of the castle. This could also go with my theory that Link and Zelda went back to the castle to save her father and found him dead, but meet Impa when they are there and leave altogether. The next shot is a beautiful one of Calamity Ganon rising up around Hyrule Castle. This imagery is classic at this point. It's such an amazing visual. We can see the pillars which the Guardians come out of already up, and there is malice everywhere. I think this could take place right before Zelda goes to fight Ganon, or is a shot which takes place after everything has gone down. The champions and Link are dead and Zelda is already fighting Ganon. The camera then zooms through to the Calamity and stops moving as Ganon raises his head to the sky, roaring out loud as the blood moon stands high in the sky behind him. Darkness then envelops the screen, and I don't know if it's just me, but if I look at the edges of this happening, I can almost see what looks to be the Master Sword or some kind of sword around the side. It could very well just be a random pattern, but I definitely see what looks to be a sword in that darkness. Then there is a flash of red and we see the classic tapestry in the background, with all the Guardians on the left and right. And looking at it again now, I think the swords I was seeing could actually have been the spaces in between the Guardians on this background. The logo for this game is fantastic. The name alone is cool. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. It just sounds awesome, but the imagery of Calamity Ganon wrapping himself around Hyrule Castle is, like I said, such a cool image, and it's perfect to be part of this game's logo. The trailer then finishes with Zelda, her right arm stretched outwards and tears falling from her eyes, as she says,
"I must protect everyone."
This 100% takes place as Zelda begins her 100-year-long battle with Calamity Ganon. Her friends and family are dead. The kingdom is in ruins, and the divine beasts and guardians have been taken over. She is all Hyrule has left. She needs to fight and hope that the Shrine of Resurrection will work and help Link come back before she can no longer hold Ganon back. The perfect way to end this trailer. And once again, we know this story will not have a happy ending. At least not for another 100 years. And, well, even then, we know there is still more to come. And that's it. That's the full trailer. There's quite a lot shown within this trailer, little hints and things only briefly told to us before in Breath of the Wild. And we really don't have long to wait. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is out November 20th. I am so happy that we're getting a Zelda game this year, and not just a remake or side game, a game which directly plays into Breath of the Wild. It's a very exciting time, as along with this game, we still have Breath of the Wild sequel to come. Who knew when Breath of the Wild was first announced that this game would eventually turn into its very own trilogy? We're getting an update on this game very soon, so I'm excited to see what's going to be shown and if anything in this video is going to be confirmed. But for now, I want to thank everyone who made it to the end of this video. It really does mean a lot that you stayed for the full thing. Tell me all your thoughts and theories on the upcoming game in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!